Whatever you can visualize, you can do today.
Here's the 2-2. Hit deep to center field. Out is back. He's on the warning track. He's at the wall. Goodbye.
One at bat.
High fly ball, deep right field. Nicholson back. Nicholson at the wall. Kiss that baby. Goodbye.
One pitch.
Here's the 2-2. Knock him out. Ball game is over.
Stay in the moment. Show that heightened awareness.
3-2. Swing and a miss. He struck him out. Half a dozen for Kevin Shipp.
He was a winner. So are you. He was a champion. So are you.
Bernhardt hits it. There it goes. Way back. You can forget that one.
And we love the big game.
It shot its way to Higgins. Hit deep to left field. Smith is back at the wall. Looks up. Kiss that baby. Goodbye.
We love the big crowd.
I need not tell you that this place is rocking.
We love the pressure. We love the challenge.
Here's the 1-1 pitch. Curveball hit into center field, tailing away from Kerner. He's got to go a long way. And he made a great catch. Holy cow, what a catch by Kerner.
We must heighten our awareness to be excellent. Potential's unlimited. It's unused success, unused talent, unrevealed strength. It's dormant gifts that you have. It's hidden talents that you have. It's untapped resources that you have. It's a sum total of what you will be, but are not yet. Today, continue that focus. Have a good time. Play like champions. Let's go.
There is no greater authority on winning big games than Skip Bertman, the head baseball coach at Louisiana State University. Bertman has established at LSU an unparalleled legacy of excellence, leading the Fighting Tigers to 4 NCAA College World Series championships this decade. Not since Southern California won 5 straight national titles in the early 1970s has one program achieved the level of supremacy LSU has attained in earning the designation Team of the 90s. Bertman began his LSU tenure in 1984 after 8 seasons as an assistant coach at the University of Miami. He rapidly transformed LSU into a national power, and he directed the Tigers to their first national championship in 1991. LSU has continued to assert its superiority throughout this decade, following the 91 triumph with College World Series titles in 1993, 1996, and 1997. Bertman is one of only 2 coaches in NCAA Division I history to claim 4 baseball national championships, and under his guidance, LSU owns the highest all-time NCAA tournament winning percentage. Now, let's meet Skip Bertman and discover his innovative techniques in producing a championship caliber team.
Hi, thanks for allowing me to share some thoughts with you through this video. I've always used the term winning the big one as a metaphor. To me and to my players, it means striving for excellence, never being afraid to fail, being a great teammate, and being the best you can, both off and on the field. It has less to do with winning any single ball game and more to do with winning every day in life. And that's what this video is about. Now, this video is not intended for you to watch only once. Use it as a reference tool so that you can go back to any part often. For that reason, I've included an index so that you can look up specific information. Make sure your VCR is on 0 when you begin. For example, if you want a specific story or a specific motivational tool, you can look it up in the index card and go right to it. This video is divided into 5 segments: striving for excellence, overcoming failure, the fear factor, motivation, and team building. Since our mission statement is excellence both off and on the field, naturally we started there. But after that segment, any segment of the video can be watched in any order. Now, these techniques really work for me, and with some variations I'm sure could work for you as well. Since much of the video was shot as it happens, naturally I've made mistakes. But that's okay. It's okay for the coach or team leader to make a mistake. What counts, of course, is continually trying to get better. I've also put some valuable information for you at the end during the credits. There you'll find some useful telephone numbers and addresses to obtain some of the tools that I referred to in the video. I've even put my address and my phone number in there so that you can contact me as I welcome your feedback so I too can improve. I hope you'll use this video over and over again and use it as a reference tool often. Best of luck, and let's get started.
The LSU Tigers have reached the championship game of the College World Series more than any other team in the 90s, including 4 College World Series titles. And the LSU Tigers have a perfect 17-0 record in the final round of NCAA postseason play. Players, coaches, and fans alike all know the success is due to Skip Bertman's unyielding devotion to excellence.
Thanks for allowing me an opportunity to help you and your team achieve excellence. I've been on fields like this for over 35 years, trying to do a few simple things. Get more hits, throw more strikes, catch more balls, score more runs than the other guys. But as you know, achieving excellence isn't easy. It requires motivation and teaching real teamwork, making your team fully aware that a great team is more than a collection of just great players. But to build that awareness, that very real sense of teamwork, we need to start with your ability to motivate your players. Real teamwork and true motivation. Those are the tools you need to be excellent, to succeed, to win often, and to win the big one. I'd like to show you how I put those tools to work to create some championship teams. Now let's get started. First, and I believe the most important, building championship teams starts long before taking the practice field, because champions do more than just score more runs or more points than their opponents. To make champions, you've got to build their entire lives, their bodies, their hearts, their minds around excellence. And that's why I start with a very clear, very strong mission statement that applies to my players' lives. You and your team should have a mission statement too. Our mission statement is this: excellence, both off and on the field. Perfecting any skill starts with an attitude of excellence. Here's a lesson you can teach your team. Excellence is quite simply the continuous, relentless, never-ending commitment to improve. Excellence is the gradual result of always trying to get better. It comes from the Latin word excel, which means to rise up. Excellence is getting to the field earlier, training harder, practicing longer, working smarter, and preparing more than others care to or expect to. To achieve excellence, you've got to believe and make your players believe in the value of every available moment of every day and in the quality of each teammate. Excellence doesn't come with any amount of expected effort. Excellence means making a special effort. Do more than is asked, expecting more of oneself. Here's a defining characteristic of excellence, and you have to try and instill it in your team as I try and do. Excellence is not a sometimes thing. You don't achieve excellence through a series of afternoon practices. Excellence is an all-the-time thing. You can't just do things right some of the time. A near miss isn't almost right. Doggone it, it's wrong. In America, we spend a great amount of time and money to achieve the very small difference between very good and excellence, because excellence is the highest standard by which we measure human achievement. See, excellence is a habit. Winning is a habit. So, unfortunately, are losing and mediocrity. And like all habits, they affect our lives. If there is a secret to excellence, it's this point, and you should make it perfectly clear to your players. Excellent seekers aren't 20% better in any single area. They're 1% better in 20 different areas. And the first rule of our program is, good enough never is. We seek excellence both on and off the field.
One thing that he does different in that strive for excellence is that he's just relentless in his approach to practice, that it's never enough. It doesn't matter what time it is, that you know, there's things that got to be done and things that got to be done a certain way. From making sure that the field's clean when the opposing team comes in to take batting practice, to the way you take batting practice and the way the team runs on and off the field. I mean, nothing's too small in his mind.
Bertman has enjoyed great success on an international level as well, having served as the head coach for the 1996 United States Olympic bronze medal team and as an assistant coach on the 1988 U.S. gold medal squad. Skip Bertman led the LSU Tigers to the College World Series 4 times before finally winning a national championship. And often, his teams became champions after suffering big losses. That's because Coach Bertman knows how to get his team to overcome failure.
People won't get fired up, won't set high goals, they won't try new things because they're afraid they're going to fail. And truly, the number one obstacle to success in adult life is fear of failure. But everybody fails. Learning to be resilient, persistent, relentless is what the players must learn, because failure is a part of winning. Excellence seekers see failure as a temporary setback and part of the natural laws of life. After all, everybody fails. But when my player fails, I ask him to ask himself the 2 most important questions. 1, what did I do right that got me this far? And number 2, what could I have done differently to make the situation come out a little better? No negatives, no beating yourself up, just learning and growing and moving on. Legendary basketball coach John Wooden introduced a fast break to college basketball. In that year, they set a record for turnovers at UCLA. But of course, they stayed with it, perfected it, and the rest is history. Sports Illustrated, for 11 straight years, never made any money. But they stayed with it. And of course, that too is history. You can't give up, you can't give in, you have to be relentless. Chuck Noll, Tom Landry, and Bill Walsh, 3 of the greatest NFL football coaches, counted for 9 of 15 Super Bowl victories from the years 1974 to 1989. These 3 coaches also have another record in common. They have the worst record for a first-year coach in NFL history. But they stayed with it. See, they were resilient, they were relentless, they were persistent. Can never give up, you can never give in. People remember you for your successes, not for your failures. Ty Cobb is a great example of how we remember people for their successes and not for their failures. For many years, Ty Cobb was considered the greatest base stealer of all time with 96 stolen bases. But he was safe only 70% of the time. That means he was thrown out, that is, he failed nearly 1/3 of the time. But we don't remember that. Now, the Major League record for baseball's highest percentage in stolen bases, 51 of 53, is held by Max Carey of the 1922 Pittsburgh Pirates. That's 96%. But nobody remembers that because he didn't risk enough. When Rickey Henderson finally set a new stolen base record, he was thrown out 42 times. That, too, is a Major League record. See, risk is not just important, it's essential. It must happen for you to be successful. The most prolific failure of all time was Thomas Edison. As everybody knows, he tried thousands of times to perfect the electric light bulb and a storage battery. But this guy was relentless. He was persistent. He was really resilient. So much so that by 1930, fully 1/6 of the people in America used a product that was marketed, distributed, and produced by this so-called failure, who obviously saw every failure as a learning experience of how not to do it. Failure. It's part of winning. Remember, risk isn't just an option, it's imperative. You might want to teach your players, as I do, that they will fail. We all fail, and we simply need to use it to get better. The more familiar players are with failure, the easier they can rise above it. I use a couple of techniques that have been successful for me. One is, I take some 36-inch poster board, and on that paper, I put newspaper articles of tragic circumstances, often failures of one kind or another that have actually happened recently. Then I usually put it in the end of the dugout near the bat rack so the players can see it. Here's what I do when a player strikes out, throws a home run pitch, or makes an error and he's really down. I'll give the player a few moments to compose himself. Then I refer him to the poster as a reminder of what can really go wrong in the world and how we can rise above tragedy in life as well as on the baseball field. My players practice telling themselves, I'm better than that. I can overcome this. Then pick themselves up and get back in the ball game. Players have to learn to be comfortable with failure. After all, it's part of the game. Mark Twain once said, the ability to forget is often more important than the ability to remember. And boy, that's true if you've just delivered a pitch that was hit for a homer, or you struck out and left a couple of runners on base. Our players have to develop mental muscles that allow them to be flexible enough to make a mistake and then say to themselves, I'm better than that. Next time, I'll do better. A great technique to get back into the moment, to shake it off, is literally to flush it. A technique that was given to me by Dr. Ken Ravizza, who worked with us on the Olympic team. He's a sports psychologist with the California Angels. And in the back of our dugout sits a bank with a battery in it, in the shape of a toilet. With the battery allows it to flush. In which the player can literally flush away his mistakes. This symbol is so successful, I've gotten each player a keychain with a smaller version where he can take it with him, and whether on or off the field, he can flush away his mistakes. You want to help your own team do the same. Recognize first, you can't succeed without risk, but risk brings failure. So help your players get comfortable with failure. Use those unavoidable failures to overcome, learn, and seek excellence. And the vital thing is that failure really is part of success. Be relentless.
I can remember a game against Tennessee where I was pitching and the score was tied, and the leadoff guy next came in and came up and hit a home run. They went ahead by 1 run, and I still had 3 more outs to go. And Coach left me out there, and that gave me confidence. And what he says is, you got to flush it and move on to the next pitch and the next out, and that's what I did. And he also says, all you can do is all you can do, and all you can do is enough. And when you're out on the mound, you learn from that, and he gives you the confidence to go out there and get the next out. And that's what I did. I got the next 3 outs, and my teammates picked me up, and we eventually ended up winning the game.
Skip Bertman has produced more than 20 Major League players during his tenure at LSU. His players know how to play under pressure because one of Bertman's techniques is designed to help his players overcome a powerful but distracting emotion, fear.
There's a saying that you might want to teach to your team. It goes like this: weak teams avoid challenges. Champions rise up and meet challenges. The reason anybody runs from a challenge is simply plain old fear. It's the doubt, the anxiety, the nervousness that you're about to be put to the test and you might not make it. Well, here's an example how you can get your team to put fear on their side. You and your team should know that fear is natural. It's the appropriate response in challenging situations. At its worst, fear sends bad messages that start with physical responses like a faster heartbeat or a dry throat. Then the imagination runs wild and the imagined consequences become exaggerated. Suddenly everything seems more difficult than it really is, causing people to underreact or overreact. To help your team handle fear, you must get them to acknowledge it. Don't ignore it or shrug it off. I don't like it when players become too cool. I believe it's the wrong attitude. The crew on the deck of the Titanic, they were too cool. Initially, they thought that their ship couldn't be sunk by an iceberg. Obviously, that wasn't the appropriate response. The first thing you have to do is acknowledge fear. The good news is we've got plenty of company. Everybody fears failure, even the great ones. Here's a couple examples. Bill Russell, one of the greatest and winningest NBA players ever, would get nauseous before the big game. Edwin Moses, the greatest 400-meter hurdler ever, who ran 102 races spanning 7 years without ever losing, he said, Before a race, I feel like I'm being led to my execution. The best competitors understand that there is no choice but to confront fear and turn anxiety into excitement and action. Here's an analogy. Fear is like fire. When under control, it can provide the energy, say, and the warmth that you need. When out of control, it can burn up everything around it. When fear is controlled, it can be your friend. Fear can be your ally. Here's an acronym that we've used for years. FEAR, false evidence appearing real. Fear tells lies. It distorts and exaggerates, making it hard to tell what is real and what is imagined. What is real is the point I want to make to my players again and again. Their coaches and teammates will love and support them no matter what happens. And that goes a long way toward turning fear into a tool for excellence. Here's a good mental and emotional exercise. Learn it and use it often in those moments of fear. I tell our players to take an imaginary trip around the bases. Starting at first base, acknowledge fear and that it's real. Then take a deep breath, relax, and go for second. At second base, do this. Look around and imagine the worst thing that could happen at that moment. Then decide what you do and do it. Then run to third, get there safely. At this point, your players have already visualized success in tight spots. But at third, I tell our players to visualize what they want to happen, all the good things that the player and his teammates are going to do. Then get to home plate mentally and put those things into action. Tell your players to find the can-do things and make them happen. Dean Smith, the former great North Carolina basketball coach, had this to say about fear and its imaginary consequences. He said, if all the situations we describe as matters of life and death really were, there'd be an awful lot more dead people around. The best way to keep fear in its appropriate place as a tool is to get your team to practice fearful situations and to focus on those things they can control, not on those things they cannot. For example, in the bullpen, set the pitcher up with the winning run at third base. All he can do is deliver the pitch. That's all he can control. In a batting practice situation, make sure that the hitter is up with the winning run at third base and that he tries to get the ball into the outfield. You must focus on those things that you can do, not on those things that you can't control. The reason fighter pilots can enter very real life and death situations and still take the appropriate action is that they have rehearsed the situation literally thousands of times and they are confident. Remind your players as they confront fear, they have rehearsed many times and they too can act with confidence. Here's a technique I've used for years. It capitalizes on the energy that fear creates and helps our team turn it into a tool at just the right moment. There are a few minutes right before the game that can provide you with a wonderful teaching opportunity. That's when real readiness on the player's part exists. If the player is going to have problems with fear and self-doubt, this would be the time. Many think, what if I'm the one who makes the error? What if we lose tonight? What if I play poorly, and so on? Now, it's never said out loud, but it's often thought of at this time. It's right after infield. It's just minutes before the game begins. I always take my team to right or left field, depending upon which dugout we're using. I always go over the signals, repeat the game plan information that I think is necessary. Then I wait for eye contact, and I tell a story, a true story, about a person or people who have performed best when it counted. At just the right time, my players can hear about and even feel the fear that others before them have felt and overcome. Then they can take the field and do well in spite of their own anxiety. Here's parts of a story that you could use about fear. Dennis Krimble, a Navy pilot, takes off from the Kitty Hawk in the Persian Gulf. And he's on a combat mission. He describes in vivid detail, you know, the anxiety and how hard your heart beats. And at 40 miles, his radar picks up other aircraft. As a flight leader, he has to decide very quickly whether they're friend or foe, whether to engage or withdraw, and assign to each of his planes who to go after. When he's within 15 miles, the decision must be made. At 15 miles, there's only 75 seconds left. The reason that they can do that, those fighter pilots, for every combat mission they're in, they've got hundreds and hundreds of times they've been in a simulator, a similar situation. They are prepared. They have chemistry of confidence. They believe that they can. What you have to remember, guys, is that pressure will make you better. Because you two, what's real is you two are prepared. You've been prepared for this game for weeks and months, and in essence, for years. So today, when you go out, use fear, talk to it, make it your ally. There is no real pressure. You're going to be supported and loved by your teammates and coaches no matter what happens. Because you represent LSU, you represent your family, and you represent your maker. Today, let's play like champions and have fun too.
I was feeling very nervous before the big game, and I mean, I had the butterflies going and my adrenaline was rushing, and you know, that can be a debilitating feeling. Coach Burtman takes me aside and he says, Eddie, see, that feeling you have is your body's way of getting ready to perform at a higher level, and use the fear. And I used it, and I got the big hit and did well, and from then on, I used fear as my ally instead of a debilitating force.
Coach Burtman has inspired the LSU Tigers to many championships, including 6 Southeastern Conference titles in the 90s. One of Burtman's cornerstones is his belief in motivation.
Motivation is a much overused, much maligned term. It usually refers to pep rallies or sales rallies in business. Motivation is very, very real. Motivation is the fuel that enhances people's performance. Motivation comes from the Latin word moto, to move. Even a decision to do nothing is based on motivation. And just as certain fuels burn with different levels of intensity, different kinds of motivation work for different situations and different people. Let me show you what works for me, and with certain variations I feel could work for you as well. Here's a quick rundown of some specific motivational techniques I use. You've already seen a few, but I want to give you some more details so you can use them as well. I use custom-made videos, stories of real people and real events, some good demonstrations to make a point, a very large collection of quotes and motivational statements I distribute regularly, and our successful speakers series, and even some individual activities for our players to use on their own. One of the great motivators, I feel, is the use of video. All people, but especially young people, are zeroed in on video. They're used to watching MTV, the TV screen, and of course, computer screens. If you keep it short, it'll really work. I usually use the time during the other team's batting practice before a game to show the video, but actually it can be done anytime. The video is divided into 4 categories: baseball skills and stories of ball players, or stories about the game itself. General motivational videos, and these are videos of all kinds of people being successful, people overcoming adversity. Music videos, that is videos of our players, and these are energetic pieces which let our players see themselves on the screen, and educational videos like those which carry a great message, such as anti-gambling or anti-tobacco or another good message. But here is the key. You've got to collect videos and portions of videos continually. Treat them like a reference library. Update your collection and do more than just play the tape for your team. For example, prepare a short presentation to introduce the video, then another to drive home the point afterwards. Rehearse your pre-video talk and your wrap-up afterwards. You know, the world is full of great stories that are highly visual and effective for you and your team. I've created tapes and given them titles our kids can relate to, like Defense Wins or Defense Wins Again, which are really copies of Major League Baseball highlights, sometimes taken from video that was bought in a store, and sometimes taken right off of post-game television highlights. I also use movies like Mission Impossible, Rocky, Braveheart, and many others, and take out short segments that I feel are meaningful for the players. Other videos include great moments in baseball, like Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak, or Roger Maris's 61st home run, or other great moments. The videos are always put together in a way that is powerful and always motivating to the team. The most common of all the video I use is highlights of our players set to music. It's very important for our players to see themselves being successful on the screen. We use our own videographers at LSU, but we also use private companies in our community to shoot games and regularly edit the videos. But the tape doesn't have to be professional TV quality. They can be done by a creative parent or booster, or even a student with a camcorder. What's important is to put some cheering, some music, and other actions together to inspire your players. I feel certain your school has the facilities to create these videos, but even if they didn't, you would be able to get a sponsor and still show these videos to your team. Be creative. It really works. Another important item is general motivation. Videos that involve things outside of baseball but make a great point, like teamwork, for example. Or great Olympic moments, such as speed skater Bonnie Blair, who was the first woman ever to win 5 Olympic gold medals. Or Billy Mills, who had a dream of making the Olympic team. While it was a long shot, neither his obscurity nor disadvantaged childhood could keep him from being the first American ever to win the gold medal in the 10,000-meter run. Some of this video comes right off of television. Great spots on TV where you can take it right off and show it right to your kids. A nice spot on a magazine show or some other TV show. A great source of inspirational, motivational video in part can come from the movies. Go to the video store near you and rent a movie and take that inspirational part out and work it around your team and get the message out to your club. Keep in mind, as a teacher, you have the option to use existing videos and even TV broadcasts to teach your players. Of course, you have to follow existing copyright laws, which usually mean you can make a single copy for instructing your players. Naturally, you can't sell or mass-produce copies. Another technique I use is the demonstration. Now, demonstrations always make a point, a very vivid point, at just the right time. Like here's a good demonstration just before the game of a team-building exercise. Man, I have 25 nickels that represent 25 guys in the team. Boy, they're easy to stack, aren't they? Boy, you can put them right one on top of one another, and you can get all 25. Not much of a problem. We can stay together. We can be one. But boy, if you have one guy bent out of shape, not in the system, some guy who's not with it, I guess we could carry him for a while. If you had 2 guys, maybe we can carry maybe 2 guys like that. But they can offer no foundation. You see, if they're bent out of shape, there's no chance that we're going to be able to get on top of these guys. There's no chance that they can help any of us. If we try and put them in the middle, see, and then we try and stack some guys on the guys, but they're bent out of shape, their attitudes are different than the rest. That's not going to happen, boys. You can't be bent out of shape. You got to be with the team. You got to remember the nickel demonstration. Where do you get information about that nickel demonstration? Well, I don't remember exactly, but I'm sure that I heard it on an audio cassette tape. They're really good. Check out any audio cassette tape about personal improvement and team building and management, and they're really good. Yeah, they're expensive, but you can't put a price on personal improvement and what you can do for your people. They're really good. You listen to them, of course, when you exercise. You listen to them whenever you have time. They'll really help you out. I also use demonstrations I learned from people who I admire, from teachers, other coaches, and businessmen. Learn all you can from those around you. they can teach you, and you in turn can teach your team. But demonstrations and symbols aren't the only powerful tool that you have. Don't ever underestimate the power of the spoken word. And of course, one of the motivators that I use is a story. And stories are the best way to make a point that my team will remember. When people hear a story, their imaginations are set off. That forms pictures in their minds. These pictures trigger emotions that cause your message to be imprinted, helping your players to remember the names and the point of your story. Usually, I start off the season with this story. Members of your team are likely to remember the story of one man who achieved what many thought was a barrier, but actually was just a mental barrier. Of course, the point of this story is that for you and your team, there are no barriers. In Oxford, England, tall, skinny, 25-year-old medical student named Roger Bannister is going to try and run the mile under 4 minutes. For 100 years, nobody had been close to that time. The race begins, and Bannister jumps out to 1:58.2 at the half. At 300 yards to the finish, he breasts the tape in a miraculous 3:59.2. Now that he's done that, he collapses and people rush out and they're worried about him because nobody thought this could be done. The crowd of 1,200 goes into pandemonium, but the Dreambusters, they run out to measure the track. It must be too short, but it was an inch over 1 mile. Wind wasn't a factor, the record stands. The next week, he runs again a sub 4-minute mile, and 2 other guys do it. That year, from May 6th to December 31st, 13 guys across the United States and the world ran under 4 minutes. For 100 years, nobody could do it. Then 13 people could do it all at once. It was a mental barrier. Now 20,000 people have run under 4 minutes, including high school kids. The record's 3:44.3. There are no barriers. Once that barrier is lifted, you realize the attitude changes. Lives change. You can accomplish and do anything. Our team has no barriers. You have none. You can get 3 hits today. You can get 3 homers. You can pitch and throw no-hit ball. You can make great defensive plays. Whatever you can visualize, you can do today. Where do you get those stories? Well, most of the stories that I have come from books. There are hundreds and hundreds of books and so many great stories of inspiration that you could use. Many stories make a point. One time during the year, I thought that our team wasn't really putting the other team away. We'd get a lead, we wouldn't build on it, we'd let them back into the game. And I looked up, Rocky Marciano, an old hero of mine. Boy, he could put them away. Rocky Marciano was born in Brockton, Massachusetts. He was a great baseball player. His minor league career cut short with a bad arm, went into football. He was a minor league football player in the old Continental Football League. NFL doesn't give him a shot, so he decides to go into boxing. He was the only guy to ever be undefeated. And in 1952, he ended Joe Louis, the fella I told you about last week, comeback bid. But on September 23rd in 1952, he beat Jersey Joe Walcott in the 13th round, and then 8 months later defended it again and beat him in the first round. 6 years later, he retires, 49-0. He was a vicious puncher. 11 KOs in the first round, 43 of 49 knockouts. And that's what this story's about. He could finish him off. He didn't play with him like Muhammad Ali. He could sense it when they were on the ropes, when he had it. We've got to sense it today. So must you. Finish them off today. I know you'll do that. You represent LSU, your family, and your maker. Today, finish them off. Have fun. Play like champions. Let's go. After I get the story about Rocky Marciano and putting him away, I put it into my computer, but you could write it down. I've got lots of stories about Henry Aaron and Jim Abbott, about Roger Bannister or Billy Mills. Let's go down to the Marciano story, call it up at the right time, and make sure that I've rehearsed it and that I can do it flawlessly when I give it to my team. Just takes a minute or 2 before the ball game. The important thing is be accurate when you do a story. Have the names correct and the dates correct. That's very important. And here's an important point. Stories help me too. I want to feel the white, hot, searing, passionate heat of their excitement. In order to get that, I have to coach and teach with a passion. It has to be what you love to do, so you and your team can make some memorable stories of your own. I have some techniques that the players can use themselves, like the imaginary base trip, and of course the poster board, which you've seen earlier. Here's another. It's an old, simple, but extraordinary effective technique to help players break bad habits. What they do is they take a rubber band and they put it around their wrist. And whenever it's necessary, they snap it. For example, many players have negative thoughts during the ball game. And every time a negative thought appears, they snap the rubber band as if to say, stop. It's a good tool for players who let their mind wander and lose the moment, to snap them back into the present. It works well for players who get too angry after a strikeout or a poor play. It's a good teaching tool. Usually it's done for about 3 weeks, until a player can get into the habit of reminding himself without the use of the rubber band. It's simple, it's effective, both on and off the field. Here's a point to think about. Sometimes the best motivators are someone outside of the program. Remember, kids hear from you day in and day out. Sometimes advice from someone else can be taken very, very well. Give yourself and give your players a break. Bring in someone else. Here's what I do. I call it the Successful Speakers Series. About once a month in the fall and nearly every week in the spring, I ask someone from the community to come in and speak to our team. We do it in our squad room, right at the field, many times before practice or before a game during the other team's batting practice. I tell the speaker up front that he or she only has 10 to 20 minutes to get the message across. I ask them to tell the team why they are successful, what works for them, and to share some life's lessons that they think are important. The list of people I've had includes LSU professors, administrators, and coaches, of course. But we have had some wonderful moments with local businessmen and businesswomen, doctors, attorneys, teachers, clergymen, and parents. Now, these are not professional speakers, and they are not asked to motivate the team before a game that week. They are simply asked to speak informally about feelings they may have had on the impact of the team in the community or athletics in general. They sometimes tell a story about when they or someone they knew failed, but they stayed with it and became successful. I have a player present the speaker with a plaque or an autographed baseball in a holder so they may keep it on their desk, getting even more exposure for our team. The team gets a lot, but remember, the speaker feels honored to do this, and he or she gets a lot out of it too. This is truly a twice blessed situation. Successful Speakers Series. Give it a shot. Another way I get successful people to be part of our program is to gather up all of their wisdom and hand it out to our players. I have collected through the years volumes of quotes, short stories, and bits of advice. I call these motivational sheets. Before each game, a coach or player hands out copies of a thought, quote, or story I think is appropriate for the situation our team happens to be in. The coach or player puts one in every locker, and I keep them in our squad room so our players can read and use them whenever they want. A good tip is to keep each sheet in its own cover in a binder so players can simply remove it and copy it. I have hundreds and hundreds of quotes, short stories, and statements collected over the years. I type each one in a different style and then file them under subject matter in the binder. So you have to start collecting your quotes, short stories, and statements now. Now, not every player can be moved by the statement I hand out that day. It depends on timing, their needs, and how they feel that day. But my goal is for each player to keep the sheets and ultimately use the information when it's best for him. Believe me, you'll be surprised at the impact that this technique can have on a player. Here's a true story. One day I handed out a quote from Lou Holtz, the former Notre Dame football coach. Well, I didn't know it at the time, but one of our pitchers was going through some very real emotional struggles in his personal life. Later on, he came to me and told me that simple little statement from Lou Holtz got him through that game and that day and stayed with him in his personal life. You may have some stories, demonstrations, and techniques of your own, but you must make it a habit to continually search for more. You must improve your own performance every day just as your team must. Make notes, read, talk to others, and develop each thought you have to its fullest. Remember now, some of your best ideas are going to come late at night or especially early in the morning when you just get up. Make sure you have a tape recorder or a pad and pen close by your bed. All of us have a lot of homework to do, so let's get started.
That's what's so special about the motivational sheets and things like that, is that he really, really focuses on them, and they're not just another part. They're not just a prop to the big scene of our team. You know, they really mean something to him, and in the long run, they mean something to us and our team.
LSU baseball earned a significant title handed out by Baseball America magazine. The magazine called the Tigers the program of the decade. One clear reason is Bertman's effort to foster an environment of trust, unselfishness, and commitment to excellence, all elements of a true team.
The 5 most important words for team leaders are, I am proud of you. The 4 most important words, what is your opinion? The 3 most important words, if you please. The 2 most important words, thank you. And of course, the most important word is we. Well, we're back on the baseball field because I want to talk about teamwork. Sure, the rhythms and dynamics of teamwork are familiar to us as coaches, leaders, and managers. And if you've ever put together a group that thinks, acts, and succeeds as one, then you know how rewarding and efficient teamwork can be. A team is a group of people, usually peers, who combine their talents and abilities to accomplish a specific goal or series of goals. But teamwork is more than what you do. It is how you think, and it's rarely perfect. A good team mindset simply means that 95% of the members will do what's best for the team 95% of the time. A commercial aircraft is a simple example. When flying over a body of water, technically speaking, of course, the aircraft is off course 95% of the time. The navigational system has to make tiny, continuous corrections to make sure the plane lands exactly where it's supposed to. Building a team is like that. It's okay to be off course once in a while as long as small corrections and adjustments are being made all the time. Teamwork is not a guru-driven, mystical process. It's a political process. It's brokering, adjusting, compromise, and getting the buy-in from others. People want to be good teammates, but they don't know how to keep the natural forces of competition from pulling them toward goals that are self-serving. Teamwork requires individuals to surrender self-interest for the greater good of the team. The mindset I'm talking about is that I don't care who dropped the ball. If I can stretch and reach it, I'll put it back into play. Being a good team member is a skill, and like any other skill, it can be improved. Of course, you have to realize that some people are better at it than others. And we live in a society where individual work and achievement are coveted. And sometimes it's hard to find team-oriented role models outside of your family. You know, most of the kids that we're working with, in part, grew up in the 1980s, which was referred to often as the decade of greed. There weren't very many good role models at that time. Almost all young people today are good with computers, which may also take the emphasis off team play. Yet to have excellent team play, no team member can have an individual or a hidden agenda. If his goals and ambitions are different than those of the team is less likely to succeed. So of course the question is, how can we as coaches and managers get teammates on the same page, to trust one another, to really enjoy one another, and to have a mindset of one? Let's go into our squad room and let me show you some things that have worked for us. First, I strive for that team mindset that I spoke about earlier, and this is where your teaching skills come into play. Now, see, I cover the tradition of teamwork in America. I mean, from the covered wagons that went west when people helped one another, to the quality control groups during World War II, to the feeling of one that we had in the Persian Gulf War, or any other examples that I can use that will carry the tradition of teamwork to my team. You see, I teach them that anything at all, can be accomplished if we can get enough people to care about what we're doing. I often refer to a line from the Broadway play Fiddler on the Roof.
You may ask, why do we stay up there? I can tell you in one word. Tradition.
You remember how it starts. In a very, very poor Russian village, the lead actor is on the rooftop trying to play the violin without falling off. And all around him, other fathers in the village are also up on their roofs trying to scratch out a simple tune without falling off and breaking their necks. We've kept our balance for many, many years, he said. How? That I can tell you in one word: tradition. And then he goes on to say, because of tradition, each of us knows who he is and what is expected of him. To think as one, as a team. That's the most rewarding and satisfying part of the game. Actually, it's the heart of athletics, the blending of personalities, the individual sacrifice for group success. Only that kind of thinking can take you to a place where only teams can go. Let's look at some of the elements of achieving that team mindset. Some things are subtle but powerful reminders. For example, traditionally when changing pitchers, I ask the pitcher on the mound to stay there and hand the ball off to the next pitcher and offer some encouragement. I feel that's important. The player may be leaving because he's not quite performing, yet he's still going to offer encouragement to the new pitcher. That's a team mindset. Or on the practice schedule, every day, every single day, I put a meaningful quote or affirmation from the many that I have collected over the years. You can never tell when someone will be ready to use that information. You have to motivate and team build every single day. One thing we do that's not so subtle is our individual player conference. It gives us a chance to stay in touch with each player, get to know him better, and let him know that we care. At least 4 times a year, and sometimes more often, I'll meet privately in my office with each young man on the team. We talk about grades, housing, we'll talk about the baseball program and general comments. Naturally, in addition to all these comments, the young man may ask me anything regarding his situation, playing time, and performance. Of course, the player knows all this information is personal and confidential. However, I feel it's necessary to involve parents, who are also part of the team. So I send them a completed form of all the information we discussed. It keeps parents informed so they can be motivators too, and it helps players take appropriate action since they know their parents are informed. Remember those motivational sheets I used? Well, many of them are about teamwork, like this one from the great Penn State football coach Joe Paterno. When a team outgrows individual performance and learns team confidence, then excellence becomes a reality. Now, other sheets look like these, collected over many, many years, and I hand them out often, as I've said before. As we go on, I'll refer again to the team mindset. That's the first thing I try and do. Second is our team covenant. A covenant is a binding written agreement, a promise by solemn agreement. Naturally, we take our covenant very seriously. I have everyone on our team, players, coaches, trainers, managers, sign a covenant. In it, I repeat all the things that I've said on this video. Here is a sample. Each covenant must be customized for each team. We start at the top with our coach's goals and priorities, which include academics, moral environment, and of course, carefully define excellence as we envision it. We include the team motto and a list of key phrases we continually use throughout our program, like synergy, the law of average, motivation, belief, faith, and loyalty. I've already mentioned some of them to you, and I'll get to some others in a moment. Of course, we include a place for the player to sign. You can make your own covenant, but it must be personalized and customized for your team. That way, your players will know what is expected of them. Next, I build on that team mindset, our traditions, and our covenant to create synergy. Synergy means working together, but synergism is more than that. It's two or more people working together in a way that their combined power is more than just the sum of their individual power. Here's a great example of synergy from Pat Williams' book, The Magic of Teamwork. His example is a horse pulling contest at a county fair. The first place horse pulled a sled weighing 4,500 pounds. The second horse pulled 4,000 pounds. The owners figured that meant that two horses together could pull 8,500 pounds. And they decided to find out. Well, guess what? When the owners hitched the horses together, both of them pulled 12,000 pounds, 3,500 pounds more than the sum of their individual efforts. That's synergism. How does that affect your team? Well, you can put together 9 guys that can play like 10, 11, or 12. The trick is to find the best 9 with true synergism. That team will play better than a team of the 9 guys with the best statistics. That's why our covenant, our written promise, states clearly, I play my best 9, not my 9 best. I look beyond statistics. I look for emotion and excitement and passion. I find that sometimes other players will respond better when a particular player is in the lineup. I look for that team response. That sends a message to the team that individual statistics are not as important as team statistics. Next, I teach them about the law of average. It's not a principle. It's not a theory. It's a real law. So real, in fact, that insurance companies with their actuarial tables and, of course, the gambling industry put the entire fate of their enterprise into the law of average. Now, it doesn't predict what will happen on each and every play, but over the long haul, the law of average must, absolutely must, work. It's a law. And remember, everything counts. It's in our covenant. In college, I had a philosophy professor who once asked the class, when I clap my hands, how much did your life change? Well, of course, I thought he was kidding, and it wouldn't change at all. But actually, I find out later there were some chemical changes in that split second of a clap. But then he said, if I was silly enough to clap my hands the 4 years you went to college, how much would your life change? Well, the answer, obviously, is a lot. But like a single clap, some things are very hard to measure. Like when one of my players visits a boys' clubs and talks to some of the youngsters, did the team get better? Yes, just as in that single clap. Will an extra round of batting practice win the national championship? Probably not. But if that extra round is just one of a series of claps, that can cause a lot of momentum. Remember the first line in M. Scott Peck's book, The Road Less Traveled? Life is difficult. Well, there's no doubt about that. What's really difficult is taking small steps to achieve very large goals. A gentleman by the name of Don Bennett knows a lot about small steps and difficulty in life. He was the first amputee to climb up and down Mount Rainier. After getting up to 14,400 feet and getting back down, a throng of reporters came to see him and said, Don Bennett, how could you do that? And he looked down at his single leg and he said, one hop at a time. That's how teams are built. One idea at a time, one practice at a time, one day at a time, one player at a time, and even one clap at a time. A small series of successes that cause a wave of momentum. And coaches, keep this in mind. Your attention to detail will rub off on your players. We pay an awful lot of attention to details at LSU. The way we dress, the way we fix the field, the way our cages look, and yes, I even make sure the coffee's hot in the concession stand. You see, every decision that you make counts. It's a law. It's in our covenant. Yes, we all need a lot of good baseball fortune, but actually luck has very little to do with it. L-U-C-K, laboring under correct knowledge. Luck is knowing the probabilities and then making those continual, tiny adjustments to put your team in a position to win. That's all coaches can do. Coaches can't control the outcome of a ball game, but they can control the probabilities. A football coach can get a kicker closer to the crossbar just before the winning field goal try. A basketball coach can get the shooter closer to the basket for that final shot. And of course, a baseball coach can get the winning run to the plate. Here's a great example of how good baseball fortune combined with a great team mindset created the greatest moment in my coaching career. There we were in Omaha at the College World Series in the championship game. It was the bottom of the ninth, 2 out, down by 1, and a runner at third base, and Warren Morris stepped to the plate. He had been injured for most of the year and hadn't hit a home run all year. Then bang, first pitch out of the park. On the 50th anniversary of the College World Series, on what could have been the last at bat of the season, reality and fantasy merged for one short moment. The series had never been won that way in 50 years. But part of our mindset is that we believe in miracles, in coming from behind, in winning against all odds. We believe in the power of the human spirit. It's in our covenant. Now, having this magic doesn't mean an athlete will win the Heisman or make it to the big leagues. Some will and some won't. It's a law. But it does mean they'll be fun to work with and fun to watch. They'll make memories and sometimes create victory out of pure dust. And because they perform so well under pressure, people will follow them anytime, anywhere. You see, these people have passion, and that's something that can't be overrated in the team concept. Every spring day or spring evening in America, in some league or another, a player will step up to the plate with 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth and will hit in the winning run. It's a real possibility, but you have to convince your players that your team can be the one to do that. You got to build on the team mindset and get the winning run to the plate, and most importantly of all, believe it can happen. Another area that we cover in the covenant is responsibility, and I think that you should too. In America today, the national pastime really isn't baseball. The national pastime in America is transfer of blame. Kids learn this at an early age. You can read about it in the newspaper all the time. Democrats blame Republicans, Republicans blame Democrats. Rich people say the government takes too much in tax, and poor people say the government doesn't do enough for them, and it goes on and on. Baseball's a game that's well suited for transfer of blame. The mound's too high or it was too low. The field's too hard or maybe it was too soft. The sun's too bright or maybe it was overcast. You see, parents blame coaches and coaches blame umpires, and it goes on and on. TOB, transfer of blame. It's not allowed in our program. Players must take responsibility for everything they are and everything they are not. For example, I do my best to explain to the players that when they pout or show poor body language, they actually hurt the team. Remember the hand clap? Everything counts. You know, when a team plays a baseball game, only 4 things can happen. The team can play well and win. The team can play well and lose. The team can play poorly and win. The team can play poorly and lose. Actually, that's all that can happen. Naturally, our goal is to play well and let the law of average take care of the rest. There's no need to transfer blame. That actually makes you weaker. As a coach, I try to reduce the pressure on the team, especially a team like ours where the expectations are so high, even unrealistic at times, but especially in the championship games. In pressure situations like this, we all have a tendency to have polar thinking, either win or fail. It's like choosing between 2 doors. Door number 1 is marked win, and behind it are all the rewards and satisfaction and pressures that come with it. Door number 2 is marked fail, with all its heartbreak and the pain that goes with it. However, there has to be a third choice for all of us. Door number 3 is a good choice. it's marked excellence. Coming through that door means that you played as well as you can, and you represented your school, your family, and your maker with the proverbial 110% effort. Players on my team know they're welcome anytime through door number 3, win or lose. Actually, winning can't be the most important thing, otherwise they wouldn't suit up several hundred baseball teams every year when only one can win the national championship. Trying to win, that's the most important thing. Being the best you can be, both on and off the field, that too is the most important thing. I want to tell you about one of the most fragile commodities in the world, and that's trust. Without trust, families break up, businesses fail, even communities can't survive, and of course, teams aren't successful. In the Jewish religion, just before the rabbi pronounces the bride and groom, wife and husband, he asks the groom to step on a wine glass that's usually wrapped in a cloth napkin. Of course, he does this and it smashes. Then the rabbi says something like, "This is to remind you how fragile love and trust really are. I could never put that glass back together again. Yet, if you take care of it, if you guard it, and you put it aside, it can last a lifetime." Actually, it's a symbol of both fragility and strength. On our team, each player has a crystal ball. Well, actually, it's acrylic. And I ask him to keep it in his locker or in his home. I remind them that everything that goes on in our program is in that ball. Every time I've seen them hug and tell one another how much they care for each other, and the times they weren't the best player or the best person they could be. Also in there, of course, are the times I was not as good a leader as I could have been. But all of it has to stay in there. If in a selfish moment, a moment of meanness, the player drops the ball and it cracks, the core of the team seeps out. I could never get it back together and push it back in there. Oh, next year I could get a new team, but I doubt if I could put that team back together again. In addition to the small crystal, we have a larger crystal ball, which is also a symbol of trust. It's in our squad room. Here the players have signed a cardboard piece that rims the actual ball of trust. And every time we meet, this too is a reminder of trust. Trust is a purely human quality, and so is distrust. Actually, it's a lubricant transferred from one person to another. Of course, you can't see it, but it's as real as me standing here. You can't see a germ, but you wouldn't argue that that's transferred from person to person. You know when trust is present, and you know when it isn't present. When trust exists on an athletic team or in a business team, people have great freedom to be themselves. An environment is created in which they're able to risk and disagree and fail and still feel good about their decisions because they know that they'll be trusted and loved by their teammates. But here's what makes trust so difficult. You see, it's digital. Like a digital clock. It either says 12:24 or it doesn't. It can't be halfway. A woman is either pregnant or she isn't. A conventional light switch is either on or it's not. A lightning bolt either occurred or it didn't. The crystal ball either broke or it didn't. It can't be halfway. You can't be 90% trusting. It's all or nothing. It's been said you can only receive what you're willing to give. And you have to be trusting to earn trust. And just as love characterizes the attitude of two people in a marriage, trust characterizes the attitude of all people on a team. When I started at LSU, naturally I was new to the players, but I had a vision. You see, I had been to Omaha, Nebraska, the site of the College World Series National Championships before. That site, even the sounds and smells were very familiar to me. And I had explained to the players that anything that you vividly imagine, it's got to be clear. You ardently desire it. You've got to grit your teeth when you say ardently. If you sincerely believe that you're worthy of it, and you enthusiastically act upon it every single day, it must, absolutely must, come to pass. Well, that season I told them about TEAM, Together Everyone Accomplishes More. Totally Excellent Alliance for Magnificence. The Pledge of Allegiance starts with I and ends with all. It takes all of us for any one of us to be successful. I told them about the Boston Celtics and all the titles that they had won and never had the leading scorer. They had t-shirts with a large baseball that said team and a smaller baseball that said me. We ate together, we worked hard together, we prayed together, and we did all right the first year. But the second year, I told them a story that my high school football coach had told to me. It's a story about holding on to the rope. I called each player into my office and used this very rope, sprayed purple so I would keep it forever, because it's so meaningful to our program. And I took the rope and I threw it over the edge of the desk. And I said to the players, if you were at this end of the rope, nothing between you but a 1,000-foot fall and certain death, who would you want holding this end of the rope, knowing that his hands were so strong, he loved you so much, he'd never let go? Well, Marty Lanou said Jeff Rebele, and Rebele said Andy Gailey, and Gailey said John Dixon, and it went around. I said to them, fellas, when you tell me it doesn't matter who holds on to the other end of the rope, as long as he's a teammate of mine, then we'll be one, and we'll be free to trust one another, make mistakes, and still feel good about our decisions. Well, that season we did very well. We ended up at the final series at Auburn University, in which we had to win 2 out of 3 to be the Southeastern Conference champions for the first time since 1975. On Saturday, we split in a doubleheader, so it all came down to Sunday's ball game. It was May 1st, 1985, and that's when the program turned around forever. That game ended 1-1. In the 10th inning, we went ahead. In the bottom of the 10th, with a runner at second base, a fly ball was lifted to my left fielder. He ran to his right to catch it. It wasn't a really tough chance, but as I looked down to see the play, I noticed all the players in the dugout straining their necks, wondering if he was going to catch it or not, transferring a message of non-trust. That ball hit his glove and fell to the ground. Heads went down. Spike started to shuffle. I said, fellas, what's important now is to pull together, to believe in one another. We went ahead in the 13th, and with a runner at third and 2 outs, Eric Hetzel came in from the bullpen. Excellent pitcher, excellent competitor, although he had pitched the day before. In looking up the pinch hitter that was brought in by Auburn, I said to Eric, let's just use fastballs, get him out of here, and we're going home with the championship, right? He said right. But as I turned around, I saw everybody in the dugout with their heads down, Spike shuffling, again, transferring that message of non-trust. Several pitches later, this batter blooped a single over third base, and we were tied again. And of course, the heads went down again. I said, fellas, pull together. We need each guy. Well, in the 14th, we went ahead again. Stan Lower also pitched the day before, but brought in for the 14th inning a great competitor, had worked himself into a situation with a runner at third base and 2 outs. He was standing behind the mound, rubbing the ball up, and that's when everything changed. A senior from Miami, Florida, by the name of Robbie Smith, stood up at the edge of the dugout, and he said, Stanley, hold on to the rope. Hold on. Well, that changed everything. Marty Lanou at third base turned to Jeff Rebele and he said, Jeff, hold on to the rope. Jeff shouted across the diamond to first base, John, hold on. I can remember the catcher, Rob Leary, with his fist in the air, saying, hold on to the rope. Did he strike him out with 3 pitches? No, it was better than that. He worked himself to a 2-2 count against a very good hitter, delivered a good pitch, and the batter swung, and as the ball hit the ground, the dugout emptied, transferring a positive trust message. With that kind of trust and belief in his teammates, naturally Jeff Rebele picked it up, threw it over to first base, and we were the champs. As a coach and team leader, people expect you to hold on to the rope. They expect you to hold on to the rope of communication as well. And of course, people in your family expect you to hold on to that rope of love. There's a great poem by Edgar Guest. It's called Tomorrow. I tell it to the boys often. It goes like this. He says he's going to be all that a mortal could be tomorrow. None would be braver and stronger than he tomorrow. A friend who was wearied and trouble he knew, in need of a lift and wanted one too, on him he would call to see what he could do tomorrow. Each morning he'd stack up the letters he'd write tomorrow. He thought of the friends he'd fill with delight tomorrow. It was too bad indeed he was busy today, hadn't a moment to stop on the way. More time I'll give to others, he would say tomorrow. The greatest of workers this man would have been tomorrow, and the world would have known him had he ever seen tomorrow. But the fact is he died and faded from view, and all that he left here when living was through was a mountain of things he intended to do tomorrow. Don't wait. Lock on to that new resolve to be the best that you can be, to be the best teammate that you can be. And remember, the number one team in your life is your family. So tonight, tell everybody in your family how much you love them. And oh yeah, just before you go to bed tonight, thank God that you live in the greatest country in the world, the United States of America. Thank you, and hold on to the rope. Potential's unlimited. It's unused success, unused talent, unrevealed strength.
Hit deep to center field. Rosamond back. He may have room. He's on the warning track. He's at the wall. He leaps. Goodbye. 3 in a row. Oh, my.
It's how far you can reach, but you haven't reached there yet. It's what you can accomplish, but you haven't accomplished it yet. Stay in the moment. Show that heightened awareness. I know you'll do that because you represent LSU, you represent your family, you represent your maker. Tonight, let's have fun and play like champions. Once we were in Baton Rouge, people were wonderful, and then you could see. And you have to be able to see it before you can accomplish it. And the sights, the sounds, and even the smells of Omaha, Nebraska were familiar to me. And I could see us there in Louisiana State uniforms, but it was hard to convince those first players. College baseball players represent the best in college athletics. I mean, these kids are good students, great community people, and once I knew that the people would meet them, we'd be okay. So I had a booster group that started with literally 11 guys, and they were fun guys, and went to 100 and so on. I used to know everybody's name, and now there's between 500 and 600. We still meet once a month, and we bring the players, and they talk to them. Once they meet the players, that's been a super part of our success, that we're community-based, and our players still speak in the public schools, they still read in the public schools, and they still visit hospitals, and they sign autographs and do baseball clinics, and that's so important. And then 94 and 95, we were pretty good and had 50-win type seasons, but didn't have the kind of guys that could close it out. But in 96, it was my favorite team, and I thought that was the best team I've ever had. And other coaches didn't agree with me. You know, as I went through the SEC, they said, "No, I thought you had a little better pitching or a little better hitting." But this team had 5-year players, guys that were walk-ons 5 years before. This team had 4-year players. This team had like 8 seniors, and you rarely ever see that. And this team had a very special kid named Warren Morris, who had a hamate problem, and the bone here would not allow him to swing the bat, and he missed over 40 games. Whenever he played, we were 22-0. Had he played the entire year, we might not have lost but 3 or 4 ball games. He was so tough to replace. And when we got to, he had a surgery, and when he played and came back, he couldn't even swing the bat, and he bunted and would take in the regional. And then slowly he got better and better. And then ultimately in Omaha he got better and better. And then finally for him to hit the homer in the bottom of the 9th, to beat a great Miami team, was so fitting. He was such a classy, wonderful kid. And dreams do come true. That's what that displayed to all of us. And then later with the Olympic team, he was the leading hitter on the Olympic team later that summer when his hand healed. And in 1997, I thought the kids were competitive and tough and super talented, and had 3 kids with just unbelievably great years, you know, some numbers that had never been put up before. And that was special also. That never gets old, of course. They're all special. And I've been very, very fortunate to have some gifted kids.